Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So, I was recently watching one of my favorite booktubers, Kalila, and she did a video reading one-star reviews of her favorite books. And a while ago, I put a video out about my top 10 favorite romances of all time. And so I thought it would be a really good idea if I read a couple of one-star reviews about them just to see the people who are on the opposite end of the spectrum of what I feel about the books. But to be honest, this is really a test about whether or not I can handle a different opinion than what I have of a book that I've read. And it's really a test for me that I've decided to put on the internet for whatever reason. So if that interests you, please stick around. By the way, I've decided to remove the people's names from these reviews because, if other people see this video, I don't want them getting attacked for their opinion. Because at the end of the day, all we're doing here is sharing opinions, and that is not illegal. But I know how the internet can be. So I just want to take that extra step just to make sure that on my end, I'm not doing anything that I consider irresponsible or immoral. And just remember, these are all opinions at the end of the day, and we're all just having fun and sharing. And if you like a book, doesn't really matter what people like me think anyways. So on that note, let's read. The first reviews are on Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I'm going to read. LMAO, what is this? I have never struggled through a romance book as much as I did with this one. Nora, mid. Charlie, mid. Libby, mid. I'm sorry, but there is not a single thing about this book that makes up for the fact that there is no substance to it. It feels like Emily Henry considered every trope that sells and decided to bunch them all up and incorporated them into this mess of a book. Some of it was just so unappealing. I am so disappointed. I was so into the siblings' relationship until they unironically referred to each other as sissy. Police. Okay, first of all, dissing sissy and then using police is crazy work because both of them are kind of cringy. But that being said, I didn't really get the impression that Emily Henry tried to integrate every trope out there into the book. Because if you think about it, it's only like enemies to lovers, I suppose. Like enemies to lovers is the only trope that's jumping out to me in terms of what was included. Like they didn't have like the one bed trope. They didn't have like forced proximity, really, to be honest. Like it felt like a pretty trope light book to me. So I don't understand the impression that that's what Emily Henry was trying to do. Also, to call Nora and Charlie mid is crazy. I understand Libby because Libby wasn't a major character, so I can understand why you would feel she was mid because by virtue of not being a main character, her backstory didn't make up a huge part of the book. So I can understand why somebody would think she was mid. But Charlie and Nora, no. Charlie is one of my favorite book boyfriends, so I will tolerate no slander on Charlie. And also the same for Nora. Nora, I absolutely adored. And I find it personally offensive that people think she's mid because I loved her and I related very much to her. So the fact that somebody can just like call her mid, I'm not loving that at all. Nora, mid. Charlie, mid. Wait, I would love to know who this person considers not to be mid. Like, who are her god tier characters? Just so I can do a comparison because I have my suspicions, but I also think, I don't know why she's so put off by them and calling them mid. I thought they were fantastic characters. I thought they were deep. I loved their banter. I loved the shared intelligence between them. I loved their love of books. I loved the fact that they both feel like they were Virgos. I loved that they were quite funny, but there was a depth to them that I don't see in very many characters. So to call them mid, I think is really insane. And I hate that, actually. Because I never knew how I would react to Nora and Charlie slander, but oh girl, you should not have put this one in. The next one is, it's clear now that Emily Henry is not my author. I just can't connect with any of her characters and they all annoy me. I won't even write some good review because I'm not motivated for that. I really tried to love this book, but damn it, I couldn't. The writing style was okay, but the plot from the description of the book, I expected a rivals, enemies to lovers, and it was the big mistake. It should have reached my brain since the time I read Beach Read that there will be no rivals. Just two people who didn't like each other, it wasn't even hatred, and who kissed in the first 30% of the book. Also, Nora wanted Charlie right away when they saw each other 2 years after their first meeting. I don't get where it came from. Why did they like each other? And if they were supposed to hate each other because of their first meeting, in Beach Read, January at least knew Gus well before their reunion. Plus, the book and all the author's books, considering like the rom-coms, what the? Okay, do I just not know how to read or is this incoherent? Why? I don't know because they're all have too much. They all have too much drama, is what I'm assuming she's trying to say, and no humor. Classical rom-coms. Overall, Nora annoyed me very much. Her whole personality is that she's an ice queen, who she's not. LMAO. Charlie was more bearable. I think it's because there was no POV of his. But I wanted to add that he was reminding me so much of Gus. Charlie even said the same phrase as Gus did. It was about not being a boyfriend material and that no one wants to date guys like him. Exactly the same thing Gus said in Beach Read. Like maybe Emily. I said it's actually EH, like Emily Henry. Maybe EH needs to at least write different love interests because this is just so lame and boring. Goddamn. Libby was the worst, by the way. She annoyed me the most, and I skimmed the pages when I saw her name. I couldn't care less about her. Honestly, from 75%, I skipped everything and just read the epilogue. It was boring, if you wondering. Girl. First of all, they never said they were enemies, though. I haven't read the book recently, but from my understanding, they just didn't have a very good first impression of their first meeting. So it's not like they were like sworn enemies and they had pissed each other off majorly. It's just that when they first met, they didn't really take to each other and then they went on to not see each other again. So they didn't have any time to become proper enemies or to improve on it. So it was never going to be proper enemies to lovers. And they weren't rivals because they were not even in the same job. Charlie, I believe, is an editor and Nora is an agent. So they were never really going to be rivals, considering that they don't even have the same job, nor do they work for the same company. So it's not as if they're vying for a promotion or a higher position or anything like that. So I don't understand that impression. Nora wanting Charlie right away. That's how attraction works for some people. Like you can acknowledge that you don't really like someone, but acknowledge that they're a very attractive man, which I suppose is where Nora's head was at. Yeah, this review I don't get. I think they just don't like Emily Henry's writing, which I can understand because even for me, who absolutely adores book lovers, I have struggled with a lot of Emily Henry's books. So I understand from that perspective. But the part where she's complaining about the attraction and the fact that they weren't sworn enemies, I don't really think makes that much sense. The too much drama and no humor is throwing me because where was the drama? Like apart from Nora struggling with her sister and the fact that she couldn't get a good relationship, that was where the drama ended. There wasn't too much drama. The humor was amazing. Emily Henry writes my kind of humor, which is why I'm really struggling to understand how this person thought that the humor was lacking. I don't think they even have a good understanding of what a rom-com is. Like I can understand if Emily Henry is not a writer for them, but every other thing I fundamentally disagree with. It's giving I hate the book, and that's fine. But the reason that they gave, I don't think make much sense, right? Am I the only one? Oh, get this. She said, my final thoughts are that I will not read any more of Emily Henry's books. It's most likely a lie, though. What? Like, if you hate the author, stop reading it. Honestly, it makes me think that this person's issues are bigger than Emily Henry. People say that this book is for older sisters, and I'm actually the younger one, but I just can't imagine that older sisters can be jealous of their younger one. Sorry, in my mind, it's the other way around. What? Like, what? How is like jealousy is an emotion completely independent of what your position in your family is? That doesn't make any sense. And also, it wasn't as if, God of mercy. Like I sometimes you read a review and you're like, the reason why you don't like this book is because you fundamentally do not understand it. Like, no offense. Anyways, I'm about to crash out clearly, and I'm sweating. It wasn't for you, but the reasons why you don't like it do not make any sense to me. Next up, we have Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. DNFing books is becoming easier and easier. I honestly hated this one from the beginning, but I kept reading because I wanted to see how much of this nonsense I could endure. Part of me also likes to hate watch and hate read. Haha. Anyways, nothing about this book clicked for me. It was full of unnecessary sexual dialogue, cringy, Wattpad-esque conversations, and cliche personalities. Dani Brown is a strong, independent woman that wants nothing but sex from her peers. She can't be bothered to talk about anything deeper, something that might scratch the surface of who she actually is. When it comes to emotions, she describes them as more of a burden rather than a human characteristic. Zafir is the complete opposite. Brimming with emotions, he listens to romance novels and hopes to have a love story of his own someday. Because his brother and father died in a car crash, he has pride, he has a dark side, she put that in quotes, and spends most of his days at work being grumpy and yelling at students. Yet when he meets Danica and knows she only wants something casual, he begins to have feelings for her. And then somehow they end up fake dating because of a video that went viral. Absolute nonsense. I don't even want to get started with a bit of Muslim the author managed to sprinkle in. Did the author even bother to do her research? I'm honestly not expecting a dissertation on Islam. This is a comedic romance novel, but some lines were truly laughable. The fake dating to lovers trope is almost never executed smoothly. Take a Hint, Dani Brown is a book that desperately tries to be quirky, with its curse-ridden narration and over-the-top sexual humor. I'm not even going to bother giving the other books in the series a try. There are parts of this review that I get, and there are parts I don't. And I mean, I can understand if like the humor is not for her, because Talia Hibbert's humor, and in particular the humor of her characters, are not to everybody's taste, and that's completely fine. I think that something like that is either for you, it's not. But when it comes to Wattpad-esque conversations, that's bullshit, and I'll tell you why. When I was a teenager, I used to read copious amounts of Wattpad, and the writing in Take a Hint, Dani Brown is nothing like it. So if we're gonna attribute everything that is even remotely playful to Wattpad, I think that is completely disingenuous. It did not read like that. I know how Wattpad read to me when I was a child and a teenager, and Take a Hint, Dani Brown was not that. Second, the fact that she also thought that Dani couldn't be asked to talk about anything deeper is also false, because while Dani was resistant to love, she was pretty deep. She always talked about her career ambitions. And unless the only thing that you consider worthy enough to be called deep is romantic love, you can't say that she's unwilling to talk about anything deep, because she did. She talked about her career, and her passion for her career was very, very center stage in this story. She talked about her sister, she talked about her family, she talked about spirituality. I do remember, I haven't read the book recently, but I do remember a conversation that she and Zaf had. The way she phrased it was like she was a witch, and she had like several like symbols and statues at her house. So she did talk about spirituality. She talked about the passion that she has for her job. She talked about deep things. So I'm a bit baffled by this idea of painting Dani as vapid. The only place she wasn't prepared to go was a romantic avenue, but she was very clear about that from the start, and it's in the blurb. So if that's not what you wanted, you could have just skipped it. I just think it's laughable to say she can't be bothered to talk about anything deeper. It's just categorically false. And then the viral thing, when it comes to fake dating, when you're going into reading a book that is fake dating, there is a huge amount of suspension of belief that you have to do. And it's the mindset that I take into every book that I read that has this particular trope, because I know that the things that I will read in this book are likely not to happen in real life with the way that the world works. And it's fine. But like, you can't really resent that going into the book. I think it's entirely okay not to be a fan of the trope, but to go into the trope expecting realism, I think it's redundant in a way, because I'm just like, why are you expecting that? It's not a trope that is conducive to everyday life. It's like, people don't really fake date in real life. For me, reading a fake dating romance book is a way of looking for an escape, essentially. And so that's why I'm never really upset when I see like unrealistic things happening in a book that is based on the premise of fake dating. I do want to talk about, because I saw several reviews about the Muslim rep in the book. Now, I wanted to say I'm not Muslim myself, and so I feel like my opinion on this matter is not relevant or not important, because how could I possibly put an opinion out there about the representation of something that I fundamentally don't understand? And I think a lot of people were talking about the fact that, Dani and Zaf engaged in premarital sex, which is a sin. And from there, I can understand why they would give the book 1 star, or why they would rate it very low, given that, because the way that I've seen it being explained is like it's a real problem and a real sin. And from the way that Muslims look at it, it has like extreme repercussions. So in that regard, I totally respect it, and I totally understand why Muslims would be put off by this book, because the rep is apparently not done well. But that's not really something that I can say. It's not a religion that I'm part of or feel like I have a right to talk about, if that makes any sense. I wanted to highlight it because I saw quite a bit of that, but I wanted to make sure, because I felt like it was quite valid to include it. If you're doing a 1 star review and you keep seeing something popping up, I feel like it's only important to talk about it, basically. And I would love to hear like other people, if any Muslims like watch this video, I would like to hear more like your perspective, because I've seen people kind like it and be okay with it because he was non-practicing, but I've seen people say that the fact that he was non-practicing didn't really matter. I don't really feel like it's my place to talk about whether or not it was accurate Muslim rap, because I'm not Muslim, and so there's no way that I would be able to determine that. Also, I want to say this: Zaf doesn't begin having feelings for Dani after finding out that she didn't want a relationship, or she wasn't interested in romantic relationships. He already liked her and already was attracted to her. But prior to the story, he wasn't sure if she was even straight because he had only seen her with women. So he basically was very comfortable in his kind of unrequited crush on her. So he already had those feelings and they were friendly. So they would see each other every day because he was a security guard, she was a teacher. So whenever she's passing to go for class, he would see her and then they would have a little chat. She would always bring him coffee. He would also give her like an energy bar. So they had a very friendly rapport. So he didn't start liking her when he found out those things about her. He already liked her and then found out those things about her. And then they connected because they were spending so much time together. Next, we have We Could Be So Good by Cat Sebastian. Just know, it feels like the author leaned on the let's make a homosexual relationship in the 50s and thought the idea alone would make a good book. It could have been a good book, but it's written very immaturely. Most ideas read Andy did this, Nick did this, they did this, and then it goes like that for 300 pages. It's the type of semi erotica 15-year-olds write to make themselves feel older than they are. You know, I really feel like people should read back the things that they write prior to posting them because why do you even like? First of all, semi erotica is crazy because this book is not smutty. And as somebody who has read a whole bunch of romance books, this is very much on the tame side. It's not overly descriptive. There aren't too many sex scenes. I think they're like max three. Like there are sex scenes and sex does happen on page, but then calling it a semi erotica doesn't make any sense. It just, the sex that they had didn't even happen until they had fallen in love. And it didn't feel like it overpowered the book in any way, shape, or form. And then the whole like reading very immaturely is crazy because these are some of the most mature characters I've ever read about. By the way, in this book, I believe both Nick and Andy are 25 and they read very much like adults. There's nothing childish about the way that they approach anything. You know, when you read a review and you wonder, like, did we read the same book? It just is crazy how people don't really bother to look past. Is it even that they don't bother to look past or they just don't read? It's actually insane. There was a little bit of miscommunication, but I feel like it made sense within the context of the story. This was the 1950s. This is not 2025 where you can walk up to somebody and tell them that you like them without the fear of losing your life. Like you can still do that in 2025. That could still happen in 2025. Look at the state of the world. But the 50s are different. Like, of course, they had to meander their way through a relationship in a way that a straight couple wouldn't, or I just don't understand how anybody can say it was immature. Those are two of the most mature, level-headed characters I have ever read about. And it never felt like, oh, Andy did this, Nick did this. There were so many subliminal messages. Like I've read the book quite a few times, and every time I go, I discover something new. I think one thing that really stuck out to me was how they would talk about how Andy would lose his keys all the time. But then once he moves in with Nick, he doesn't lose his keys anymore. But then it all plays into the fact that Andy doesn't like being alone because he spent a significant portion of his childhood alone because his parents were really busy and he was an only child. And so he doesn't really enjoy being alone. So he tries as much as possible to always be around people. And so when he's finally living with Nick, he stops losing his keys. And I thought the subliminal messaging there was, it wasn't that he was inherently careless. It was just his brain subconsciously trying to prolong how long it took him to get home because he didn't want to be alone. I don't even know what let's make a homosexual relationship in the 50s. So, like, what does that even mean? And then the next review says, I know I'm in the absolute minority here, you don't say, but I quit. I usually love Cat Sebastian books, but this one, at the moment, I can't read books with protagonists with severe self esteem issues. They're just so tedious. I shipped Andy more with Emily than with Nick. Yes, I know. And very little happens. Also, it's a little depressing to think they'll likely die of AIDS in a few years. Hmm. I don't know if it's just me, but that comment has thrown me. What the like it's giving me weird homophobia vibes. I don't know if I'm the only one because what do you mean you shipped Andy Moore with Emily? They barely had chemistry. Like there was barely anything on page to ship Emily with Andy over Nick. The AIDS comment is really pissing me off because neither of them have AIDS and they're in an exclusive relationship and neither of them have cheated on each other. So where the fuck did that come from? Like it's crazy how people can just write things and it's depressing to think they'll die of it. How would they die of a disease they don't even have? Like, what the fuck is she talking about? And then they didn't even have severe self-esteem issues. What do you mean? Like, they had insecurities that made sense within the context of the story and the time period. They were afraid of being caught. They were afraid of what people would say. They were afraid of family reactions to the fact that they were in a relationship with somebody of the same gender and they come from relatively traditional families. Actually, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but Nick actually got arrested early on in his life. So he was afraid of a repetition of that happening and the fact that his brother worked in law enforcement and it could potentially put his brother's job and life in jeopardy as well. Like, those are very, very legit fears for what they were going through at the time. Like, they had insecurities like every other person, but Andy and Nick did not come across as having self-esteem issues. So it's crazy how this person got that impression. If I'm being honest, this review is kind of disgusting to me. That AIDS comment is really pissing me off. And these are not even real characters. So I can imagine real people who belong to like LGBTQ community and they read things like this. And I can only imagine how pissed off they feel. Because what the fuck is that? I'm just gonna move on because I'm like 2 steps away from hyperventilating and throwing my laptop, and I can't really afford to throw my laptop at the moment. But like, it's crazy how people can read things and get things out of left field. Shipping Emily with Andy is crazy given that she cheated on him and it was clear that they were not that compatible. Like, why would you ship him with somebody that he completely has no chemistry with and has cheated on him for no reason? Like, people, man. I honestly don't get it. Whatever. Next is The Quiet Principles of Kit Webb by Sebastian. I don't believe these bitches will last a day. Divorce is looming. First of all, they're not married, so divorce is not looming. Because literally, they were never married, and it was never even a possibility for them to be married given the time period. That said, if you think that a couple, one of which is a man who has thrown away his entire dukedom that he was on the precipice of inheriting for the love of his life, is about to divorce and won't last a day, is crazy. Because he sacrificed his entire life and his entire reputation for this man. And with Kit, literally, how long did it take Kit to completely dedicate himself to Percy? Not very much. So, yeah. If you don't think these bitches will last a day, clearly you are a very bad judge of character. No offense. Like, everybody's allowed to have their own opinion, but this opinion is dumb, given everything that the book was about. Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Why did I decide to do this again? Like, I shouldn't have done this. Anyways, next. I was listening to the audiobook as I read along, and I absolutely hated Joel Leslie. It sounded as if he was making fun of the characters and made me think the book was crap. I honestly don't know if the book was good or not because he read it so horribly. I'd usually read this in a day or two, but I picked it up and set it down so many times it took me almost a month to finish it. Why would you review a book based on the narrative? Like, you don't even know the book is good or not, and then you give it a 1 star. Like, I don't understand. I think it's valid to not like the narrator of a book, but then to give it 1 star because of it, like the entire story, it's crazy. That's am I the only one that thinks it's crazy, or am I just insane? But then in your review, you say you don't even know if the book was good or not. What? I think I'm gonna crash out. I might need a break or something. You know what I should have done? Given that I rated all of these books 5 stars, I should really have gone to read mid reviews about them because I feel like those would have made sense more so than 1 star reviews. Because I feel like it takes a lot to rate a book 1 star. And I should have known that this is what I would see when I decided to read a 1 star review. Because I don't want to swear too much. My mom might watch this video and she won't be happy if I'm just swearing all around the place. But it's so hard to keep my composure when people are slandering books that I love without doing the needful. Next reviews are from Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney. This one says, not feeling the whole white ally savior thing. This love story was not it, and don't even get me started on the whole forgiving racist white people thing. I would give this author another try, but this book was not it. Seems like it's a book written for non-black people. I would skip this one. It's been a while since I read this book, but I don't really remember the white ally savior thing, to be honest, because I remember the main characters are black. And then the other two characters, he has a best friend who is half black, half white. And then he has another one that's white, but I don't remember that being a white ally savior thing. So maybe I'm just not remembering correctly. It could be that that was the case and I just don't remember, but I didn't really get that vibe when I read it. And then the forgiving the racist white people thing, I can understand why she would be pissed about that, because what the people in the book that were racist towards Quinn did was pretty unforgivable, to be honest. I do understand why, given the context of the world that we live in, it might be hard to forgive their actions, especially that quickly. So I actually do agree. I would agree on both sides. I understand why somebody would forgive, but I would also understand why they wouldn't. So that's not a problem, I don't think. Um, but then to say the book is written for non-black people, I have to disagree. It was a great exploration of what it's like to be in Quinn's position. She's a black young girl that is going to a private school in the US. She comes from a well-off family and she's surrounded by a lot of people who think that she doesn't deserve to be in a school with them. And I'm black, but it gives me the experience of somebody who's growing up as a black person, but also as a minority. So to say that it's not written for black people, I don't think that's accurate. I think it's written for black people, but the person didn't elaborate. But I'm thinking, is it because they felt spoon fed the ideas? At certain points, I think the author was quite heavy on the experiences that Quinn and her friends were going through, and also like her boyfriend. But at the end of the day, I am both a fan and not a fan of browbeating, but I think it depends on the context. In this context, where I assume that she's trying to get more than black people reading and more than black people to see the other side of what people who don't look like you experience, I think it was great in terms of demonstrating that. And I actually learned a lot from reading the book. I don't think it was written for non-black people. You can never please everyone at the end of the day, and some people will agree and some people won't, and such is life. Next one is, personally, I was not a fan of the book. I get that the author was trying to dive into the issues with racism in predominantly white private schools and the internal conflicts the character faced because of this, but it was so overdone. I kept hoping it would lessen with each chapter, but it didn't. It was very distracting from the story's actual romantic plot and caused me to grow a dislike for the main characters, which probably wasn't the intention. Side note, I also think Carter is just plain rude. Unfortunately, if you are looking for a plot thick book, I wouldn't recommend this. I mean, again, I could understand how people would feel it was overdone, but I think it's great for people who don't have this experience, whose realities are not this. I understand how, if this is not the life that you live, it could be too much. You know what I mean? But I feel like it's a great, how would I describe it? It's a great rudimentary book for somebody who doesn't have a full perspective, or somebody who's just completely naive about what people like Quinn experience. And I think it's great because it gives you everything you need to know. You don't necessarily have to put yourself in a position where you're thinking or guessing or overanalyzing. She's doing it for you. So she's just kind of spoon feeding you. But I do understand how that could be irritating. Though I don't understand how that could cause a dislike for the main characters, because they're the ones that are being slighted. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Carter, I thought was rude at first, but given the experience that he has at Quinn's house at the beginning of the book, I kind of think it was justified. And once they had gotten over that initial misunderstanding of how they felt, I thought he was perfectly fine. And at the end of the day, they were teenagers in high school. Like, everybody has not very shining moments as a teenager. And I don't feel like he was terrible. I actually loved Carter. I love the fact that he dedicated himself into helping Quinn with her issues and helping her grow, and also growing himself, because he actually does acknowledge where he went wrong and he apologizes. I feel like sometimes people, sometimes when they discover something that's wrong about somebody, rather than give them a chance to improve. Like, it's different if they've done something and they've showed no signs of improving it, then I can understand why you'd hold a grudge. But I feel like Carter did redeem himself. I don't really love the fact that he's getting slander, because I feel like he did redeem himself. And given the context of his life and his own experiences and his responsibilities, I understand why he acted the way he did in certain situations, given that he's a high school student and not like a grown man. You know what I mean? Next up is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. And this review says, I didn't like this book at all. I finished it in 2 hours, actually reading the first few chapters and then skimming the rest. I couldn't make myself care for the characters. I find them all to be unbelievably irritating. I thought Hazel was condescending and a know-it-all. She talks like this. I need an ambulance. The great love of my life has a malfunctioning G-tube. Like, seriously, who says that? Let alone to a 911 operator. The plot, meh, nothing I haven't read before. The dialogue, what teenagers speak like they did. Like, can you use a hamartia in a sentence? I mean, why not just say tragic flaw? And the cigarette metaphor, just horrible. One of my biggest pet peeves is people being unable to see past their nose. And what I mean by this is when, because you don't do something, or because you've never met somebody who does a certain thing, you now have it in your brain that nobody does it. There are 7 billion people on this planet. There have to be people who do things slightly differently than the norm. There just has to. And I don't feel like a book has to be entirely reflective of the majority of people all the time. We need difference, we need variety. When I'm trying to read, I'm trying to do a whole human study. And I know that it's impossible for me to meet everybody in the world. But the thing about books is that they kind of give you an opportunity into other people's insights that you may otherwise never get. I think I've seen this quite a few times about John Green's writing about how his teenagers come off as pretentious and condescending, and nobody really talks like that. But I'm sure some people do. Like, I don't talk like that, but to say that nobody talks like that while I haven't met everybody in the world is just not like, how do you know? How do you know you've not met? Like, there are so many books about teenagers who do the same things. We always complain that we need more variety, that we need to see people do things a different way, to approach teenagehood a different way, to represent all different kinds of the human experience. So, yeah, maybe not a lot of people use Hamasha in a sentence, but I'm sure somebody out there does. Like, I've not met everyone in the world. Somebody could, and it'll be fine. You just don't understand the over policing to this level is just not, I just don't get it. I haven't read The Fault in Our Stars in almost 10 years, but I don't remember feeling like they were pretentious. I don't remember feeling like they were adults in like a child's body. I don't. Another thing that really pisses me off is when, on the one hand, people see teenagers as vapid and not having very much depth and being, shallow. But then when you write non-shallow teenagers, then people have a problem. And I'm like, what do you want? I was a teenager for between 13 and 19. I probably had moments where I was more vapid or more, shallow. But I had moments of intense depth that, because I had moments where there are times in my life where I felt older than I was. I definitely believe that there are teenagers who don't act like stereotypical teenagers because of what life has given them. And, he was writing about people who had cancer at the end of the day. Like, I think it goes without saying that if you've experienced something as devastating as a cancer diagnosis at such a young age, it might cause you to grow up faster than your peers. And then, like, the extended periods away from school and the fact that Hazel and Gus really threw themselves into reading. Like, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to think that they've picked up the things that they've read in books and have adapted it because they've had to be, by themselves for long periods of time in the hospital, in waiting rooms. Like, I mean, they're not going to be like your typical teenagers, like socializing the way teenagers are because they've not had a very typical teenage experience. And I think it just makes sense that way. But I could be wrong. And then the next one says, after 2 months of struggling to get past page 13, it was only by some act of God that I made it to page 19, 6 pages of this book at all. That's when I decided to give up on The Fault in Our Stars, John Green, really forever. I have no problems with existential musings and witty repartee, but John Green's characters, teenagers, parents, everyone do this with such speed and it's jarring. I spend the majority of my reading experience thinking, is this dialogue for real? I don't mean to get all Holden Caulfield over here, but there's such a phoniness to John Green's style that I could not and can't get past it to find the heart of the story and its characters. I think this person has a problem with John Green. I haven't read any other of John Green's stories, so maybe what they're saying is right, and they've just got to a point where they're tired of the way that he writes characters, which I suppose could be true if you've read a bunch of authors' books and it's the same thing over and over again. I can understand the, I guess, fatigue. But because I've only read The Fault in Our Stars, I'm not really in a position to say whether or not it's true. But I didn't really find the way he wrote Hazel and Gus unbelievable. But if you if you only went 19 pages in, like, I mean, how much of a review can you actually get out of 19 pages? I don't know. I really did not know that reading 1-star reviews of my favorite books would be this exhausting. It will be okay. And so the next is You Should Be So Lucky by Sebastian. DNF at 30%. Maybe it's because I hate baseball, but it was also just painfully slow to me. I felt like there was no character development either. Who expects character development at 30%? Are you crazy? Like, I'm sorry, what? First of all, sometimes I feel like people really need to temper their expectations because this is a book about a man that is in active grief and another man who is experiencing a slump in his career and is kind of depressed. But they didn't really use that word, but you can tell. I'm sorry, but that was never going to be a quick book. Sometimes I feel like, what do you expect? Read the blurb at the back of the book. Sometimes you kind of can prepare yourself for what to expect. Like, nobody's going into this book thinking it's going to be some kind of fluffy romance. And I have never read a book that has given me character development at 30%. And also, there wasn't really that much. Honestly, I think I'm about to crash out. I need a break. I need water. Just like, what the fuck? And then you rate it 1 star after reading 30% of it. Reading 1 star reviews of your favorite books is not for the weak, I have to tell you. And I feel like I'm weak. I'm not strong enough. Let's read another one. The next one says, I gave up at 38. Why are people like, if I gave up a book at 38%, I don't think I would have a review for it. I think I would just leave it be and just never come back to it. It says, I gave up at 38%, which is a shame because I wanted to like this book. I had so much potential. If it was done well, the concept could have been a perfect 10. Unfortunately, this book, which is supposed to take place in the 60s, fell victim to 2020's politics. Instead of writing this book as an authentic look into the past, the author injected today's discourse, socially acceptable opinions, and language into the narrative. There was no genuine exploration of what it would be like to be a gay man back then. Instead, I'm so pissed. Instead, it just shoehorned in phrases and talking points of today. And like so many books that are supposed to be uplifting for gay romance today, the egregious use of slur. Well, she has QU asterisk R, so I'm guessing that's queer. Felt incredibly disrespectful and out of place. I mean, my God, this book takes place in New York, not Florida. It's okay to say gay. What? Okay. Let's talk about the fact that she said fell victim to 2020's politics. Does this person really think that the issues that we experience today as a society are new? Like they're exclusive to 2020s? Because I assure you that most issues that we are dealing with today have existed in the past. They didn't just like become a thing. They're just now more talked about. A lot of the issues that these men experience in these books were genuine for the time. And it's actually a pity that we are still talking about a lot of them today. So the fact that she would say, "Oh, it's not authentic," it is an authentic look into the past. As far as I'm concerned, as long as they're not mentioning the internet, it was authentic. They were afraid, like every other queer person that was probably living in the 60s at the time. They were afraid of being found out. They were afraid of losing their careers. They were afraid of coming out to their families. They were afraid of not being accepted. They were dealing with the fact that they could not be out and proud. Like, there are rarely any issues today that have not existed before. And it kind of irritates me because I feel like those are the kind of people that will be like, oh my God, it's the woke agenda. Honestly, I just. And also, there are people who were socially acceptable in the 60s. Like, to think that everybody in the 60s was a bigot is crazy. Like, I know that people are more accepting of things today, but there have always been people who have been morally upstanding. Maybe there were not as many in number, maybe they were not as loud about it, but I'm sure there were people who had amazing morals, who were accepting, who said the right things, who were considerate, who could display empathy in the 60s. This review is annoying me because I really love this book. And also, and if you can educate me, I would appreciate it. But is queer a slur? Somebody who is not in the LGBTQ community, I want to know, if somebody says queer as opposed to gay, is that a slur? Is that an insult? Because of the books I've been reading, I've been saying queer. And if that's the case, I would very much like to stop, because if I'm doing anything disrespectful, I always like to put a stop to it because I'm not about that. People deserve respect because they're human beings and because they exist. And I'm not one to play around with those things. So if it's something that is considered disrespectful, tell me and I will stop it right now. If there's like a negative connotation towards the word queer, please let me know because I'm a bit confused by that. Next is The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrun. This review says, if the tone of your book is giving I had a Tumblr addiction and didn't go to parties in high school because I was at home writing Wolfstyle fanfic, then I just cannot enjoy it. I cannot believe this book is so popular. As somebody who didn't have a Tumblr addiction as a child and don't know what Wolfstyle fanfic is, I didn't really get that impression. But if you were into both those things, please let me know if that's accurate. Because when I think about those things, especially when they mention high school, I think quite immature and sort of like nonchalant. And this book wasn't that. So it baffles me that that is the impression that they have of the entire book. Because it wasn't giving that. But then again, I wouldn't know since I wasn't in any of those communities. But it was just giving two grown adults in a situation that is slightly lighthearted but also very serious because they were going through very real human things, and I think I need help because I don't know what's going on. And then the next review says, nah, why does this book have such good reviews? Y'all tripping. If you know me, y'all tripping. You like my American accent? Sorry, that was really bad. I'm not American and it's probably very obvious. But anyway, why does this book have such good reviews? Y'all tripping. If you know me, ignore that I just read this book for real. Characters are so awful and annoying. Sorry, in caps. Dev is probably the worst written character of all time. He's so awful. Grow up. Like literally grow up. Charlie was so open and honest the whole time. And Dev was just so delusional and horrible to him for real. Give me the patience to be a good person in this moment. Like the person that was cleaning vomit and going on practice dates and protecting him and defending him. I don't know whether they're just blinded by rage or blinded by hatred. Because what to say that Dev? Nah, there's some criticisms about this book that I can understand. It's unrealistic. Maybe you didn't like the dating show premise. Maybe you felt frustrated at times due to the struggles of the characters. But to sit here and say that Dev was delusional and horrible and that he needs to grow, honestly, that's fucked up. That is fucked up to a degree that I cannot stand. The only time that Dev slipped was when he was going through his depressive episode and when he became afraid to pursue this relationship due to past hurts. To sit there and say that he was horrible to Charlie because he committed the sin of not being a perfect individual is honestly that's pissing me off because that's not Dev. And Charlie was an incredible character, but he also had his flaws and he also had his shortcomings. But that is the point of the book, is to show two flawed individuals who have come together under these unlikely circumstances and have somehow formed a bond that neither of them saw coming. And now they're just, trying to navigate their way through based on the situation that they're in and their individual struggles. But to try and paint Charlie as an unblemished angel and Dev as the devil is crazy work. Like this person needs to be y'all are lucky I'm not president because I would have put some people in jail for their opinions. I know I started off this video saying, oh, it's just opinion, but some opinions are just egregious because they're just straight up lies. If you're gonna have a negative review, if you didn't like the book, that's okay. But to sit here and lie is crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. I've calmed down. I'm okay. Next up, we have Daniel Cabot puts down Roots again by Cat Sebastian, because if you know me, you know I have a slight obsession with Cat Sebastian and I'll read anything she writes. This review says the only reason I picked up this book was because the blurb said it was set in the early 70s in Greenwich Village, and one of the protagonists was a music critic, one of my favorite. What? How do you pronounce that one? Milios? Milius? I don't know. I have no idea why the writer invented this setup when she makes no use of it at all. Daniel Cabot seems to barely do anything and seems to hate music. The plot is together, though given how annoying and self-absorbed Daniel, one feels sorry for poor Alex, who seems like a nice person and should probably date someone more interesting, but the heart wants what it wants, I guess. This started off as a short story and it shows. There's barely any character arc or depth. I would give no stars at all if I could. There are parts that I understand. There are parts that I can agree with, in the sense that if they were in it for the premise of like Daniel being a music critic, there wasn't a lot of that in the story. So I can understand why they would be pissed off at that, especially if it's something that they were perhaps looking forward to. But to say that Daniel is self absorbed, guys, I don't know whether or not you've read this book, but if you have, feel free to leave your comments down below. Daniel, I don't know if it's just me that got this impression, but Daniel is a severe people pleaser, especially where Alex is concerned. At certain points of this story, I felt that Daniel, he would just lay his life down on the line for Alex. Like, it even comes up in conversation where Alex actually mentions to Daniel or would ask him whether he's happy, because he's like, you would do anything I say. Because Daniel loves pleasing Alex. He's a very easygoing person anyways, but because he's so easygoing, combined with the fact that he's a people pleaser, he just goes along with pretty much anything Alex says, which is fine because it kind of works for that dynamic. But the fact that this person has said he's self-absorbed is crazy, because he just doesn't come across that way in the book to me. In relation to Alex, the word that I would describe Daniel as is accommodating to a fault. He's so aware of how Alex thinks, how Alex feels, what Alex wants. So to see him described as undeserving of Alex because he's selfish is crazy, because that is not the impression I had of Daniel at all. And it's amazing how people can pick up certain things when they don't like a person. This is basically a hate review of Daniel. So this person clearly just doesn't like Daniel, which I get, but I think it's just the reason why they don't like Daniel is not valid, because Daniel is not self-absorbed and he's very interesting and he's a bit like, If anything, Alex is the one that's very guarded and very set in his ways and very unlikely to explore certain things and very, caught up in his routine and things like that, which is perfectly fine. But to say that like he needed somebody more interesting is crazy because Daniel is quite sporadic and quite unpredictable as well. I think he's probably the more interesting one in terms of what he does. So this review makes no sense to me. That was the only 1-star review that I actually saw. So that's a good thing. It kind of reaffirms everything that I love about this book. So clearly, my love of this book is right. It is not wrong. Then The Long Game by Rachel Reid. So the first says, good thing I won't be missing these two anytime soon because I finished in a minute and already forgot everything. I was just about to say fuck you, but okay, I still said it regardless. Another one says, breaking my silence. I read it 4 times and each one got me more baffled. Why'd you read a book you didn't like 4 times? That doesn't make any sense. Like, if you didn't like it after the first 2 times, it was very unlikely that you would like it the fourth time around. So, well, what are you baffled about? You should really be baffled about the fact that you read a book you didn't like 4 times because that is crazy. And then the last one says, the couple's relationship feels like it regressed. Adding all the cameos from the game changer characters, this book lost the charm of the first book. I don't know if I'm just really sensitive today, but I feel like I have to defend this book. And the reason I'm saying this is that in the first book, they were lighthearted. They were just sleeping together. They were having a good time. They were much younger. They had this innocence around them because of their ages and the things they had gone through. But with the second book, they were dealing with much bigger issues. They were dealing with the fact that they were in love and could not talk about the fact that they were in love for career based reasons and the fact that they both loved their careers and were dedicated to it. They were dealing with a long distance relationship in which they had to go fly back and forth to be with one another, not for very long periods in time. They were dealing with the fact that Talia was bereaved and he was in a team that wasn't doing very well. So, on top of his personal life being a mess, his career life was also a mess because he was a captain of a team that was not doing well. And then add on to the fact that he has a partner that's doing extremely well and is oblivious to his struggles because he is not getting to see him very often. And Ilya has a family history of depression. His mother suffered greatly from her depression. I feels like it's a hereditary thing. And he's, coming to terms with the fact that he has no family and he has no friends that he can talk about it with. And it's frustrating because he has all these big feelings and he doesn't know how to express them and he doesn't know how to get the help that he needs. And so, going by that, the premise was always going to take a slightly darker turn. They're adult men now. They're close to their 30s. They've matured. They no longer are like beady eyed young people with no responsibilities. Now, the responsibilities are looking them in the face and they have to act accordingly. They have to factor in all these problems. What I don't like is when people go into a book that they know is emotional or has a bit of an emotional setup and then they are surprised or baffled by the fact that it doesn't have the earlier charm of a book that was much much more lighthearted in its premise. It just makes me feel like you have no room for depths in characters, and I don't always want to read an emotionally heavy book. I don't always want to read about a book that I know will rip my heart to shreds, but that's when I go and read another book. I don't pick up a book that has like trigger warnings or like a heavy plot expecting it to be light. And I feel like sometimes it's the expectation. If you go into a book not having the right expectations, it could disappoint you. And sometimes it is the author's fault, but a lot of the times it's not. And I don't think that they regressed. I love this book so much more than Heated Rivalry. Heated Rivalry, I loved it for what it was. I loved their relationship. But the fact of the matter is, they were not as emotionally entangled in Heated Rivalry like they were in The Long Game. They were not facing the issues that they were facing in The Long Game that they were in Heated Rivalry. What would be the point of having two books if you're going to have two identical tones to it? I just felt like you could have left it the way it was. We didn't have to do a further exploration into their relationship. But the fact of the matter is, at some point in life, you have to encounter your struggles. You have to encounter the parts of your life that are not so fun and are not so lighthearted. And I really feel like the book did that very well. I loved Ilya at the end of Heated Rivalry, but I loved him even more in The Long Game because he was just so much more of a deeper, more understanding, sweeter, more empathetic, mature man. He had truly grown. And the difference between Ilya and Heated Rivalry and Ilya in The Long Game is immense. It felt very gratifying to see, and I just struggle with this opinion because I'm just like, it's a different book, it's a different tone. It was never going to be the same. I also love the cameos. I'm not really too much of a cameo person, especially sometimes when I feel like it takes away from the books, but it didn't in this case. I loved Heated Rivalry, so I really struggle with this one because I'm just like, what did you expect? Humans are complicated, I'll tell you that. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video. I have 12 subscribers now and over 500 views, and I'm just so grateful for the people who have supported me thus far. When I started this channel a few months ago, I expected to have no views. I really went into it not thinking that it would do well. And even though I'm not a big channel by any means, I'm quite appreciative of the people that have subscribed and have commented and have watched my videos. I'm blown away that people are like watching my videos at all. One thing I really want is for people to leave more comments for me because I really love it. Like my last video, somebody left a really long comment and I loved reading it. I really love a long in-depth comment. I would really appreciate it if people just left me comments, you know, what you think I'm doing right, what you'd like to see, what your responses are to what I said in the video. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon. Bye.